It takes 30 days to turn an old habit into a new habit. And with that come along some energy shifts. So how do you work through those? Well, let me tell you. Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to be sharing a framework for you to help you build habits. We're going to use this to boost your productivity, something I'm very, very keen on and something we work on Tuesdays here on Coffee with Dr. Scott. Thank you for joining me and having coffee with me this morning. Let me get my stuff open up as always. And while I'm doing that, answer the question of the day for me if you'd be so kind. So what are the top 3 most used apps on your phone? Just put those in the comments down below. I have already answered that question down in the comments. Trello. It's funny for me even asking this question because I don't have very many apps on my phone. A lot of you might answer Facebook or Instagram. I don't even have Facebook or Instagram on my phone. I've taken those off long ago. Just don't like the constant draw towards it. So I use Trello, which is our project management software that we use with the team here. I use later.com, which actually is somewhat wrong. I get notifications on my phone that there's something to post, and then I have to go to my iPad to post it because I don't have Instagram and Facebook on my phone, but I do get the notifications on there. So later is one of them for me. And then here recently, our grocery store's aisles online is definitely something we're using twice a week to order our food and go pick it up. Which, by the way, obviously started with the whole social distancing thing, but that's a new thing for us. And it's funny for me because I used to love going to the grocery store. Like it was a Sunday morning 5 a.m. routine for me. Every Sunday morning 5 a.m. I'd wake up. I woke up earlier on Sundays than I did it during the rest of the week just to go to the grocery store and have no one around, but just be able to walk around and enjoy it. But I actually enjoy picking it up and being quick about it even more. So those are my 3 apps. Put yours in the comments down below, please. And let's see, I missed that button, didn't I? There we go. So again, we're going to be talking about what I call habit gravity and escape velocity today. My business is called Cairo Launch, so I'm big on rocket ships as it is, but it's actually very, very fitting here that we're going to be talking about habits compared to a rocket ship launching. And this framework that I'm going to give you is designed to bridge the gap between the inner game of productivity and then the outer game of productivity with distractions and everything else that goes on in our life. It's kind of a combo between Eastern meditative thoughts as well as some Western management theory and systems and very logical stuff. So before we get into the framework, I want to talk about 2 things. One is probably one of the most powerful states that we can get into, especially as we're trying to build new habits, and that is awareness. So awareness is a very, very powerful state to be in. It's also a very, very rare state that we get into. It's a state where we zoom out from ourselves and we kind of see the entire situation with ourselves in it, and we kind of know what's best for us and what's not. One of the most common examples here for awareness would be of someone who goes to the doctor and gets a bad diagnosis. It puts them in a state of awareness, right? Where they now know what they want in their life. They create a bucket list and they go out and do things based on that awareness. So it's a very rare state, and unfortunately, sometimes it takes something like that for us to get into that awareness. Some that a lot of us are probably very familiar with, similar but smaller, is if you go out for a night of drinking. And you wake up the next morning and you're like, oh, I'm never drinking again. That's actually a state of awareness. But unfortunately, that awareness tends to fade in that situation, right? You say, I'm never drinking again, and you're in a state of awareness. You're actually probably making the right decision for yourself. And unfortunately, that fades. And the next time you do it, you go through that same process again where you become aware, but then that awareness fades off. Side note, I'm actually, just last week was 6 months of no drinking, which was not like me getting sober or anything. I guess in essence it was, but it was just one day I decided to stop drinking. And here we are just over 6 months later that I have not had a drink. So, side note. Anyways, so awareness is something that's going to help you see the next step. I mentioned in the Secrets of High Performance Chiropractors a couple of times that just yesterday we talked about relying on the unseen forces, and a lot of people don't want to take that next step. Let's say your path to this new habit is like a staircase. And if we take one step, but we can't see the rest of the steps, sometimes we get nervous and we don't want to take that step. This awareness allows us to back up a little bit and see a few steps ahead, which gives us the confidence to take those steps. So again, rareness, very rare state, but very powerful state, and also something that fades. So we have to use that awareness to our advantage here when we talk about habit gravity. Second state I want to talk about, I shouldn't say state, second energy. Second thing I want to talk about is energy. One of the most powerful energies that we have in our lives is called willpower. Again, very rare as well. Something that we don't get enough of. The people that you see that you think have a lot of willpower are actually people that just got into a routine. I've also said to myself, when it comes to nutrition, like I have no discipline. I just don't put things in front of me that I choose not to eat. But if there's something put in front of me that I would normally choose not to eat, I'm going to eat it. So it's not necessarily about willpower. Even as you look at people say, oh, they have this great willpower, they've just put themselves in good routines. They've put themselves in good situations. Your willpower is very, very affected. We have more early in the morning. That's why I always talk about morning routines. And it wears off during the course of a day. It fades just like awareness does. And it fades for something we call decision-making fatigue, which I'm going to talk about, I think, 2 weeks from now. That willpower is something that we have more of at the beginning, but we lose it throughout the day. Every time we use it, we lose it in the course of a day. But it's very, very, very powerful energy, and we have to use it to our advantage as well. So this leads to the framework that I want to talk about today. And this framework, again, that we call habit gravity and escape velocity. Basically just saying that it does take 30 days to change an old habit to a new habit. And along that, with that comes some energy shifts. The first 10 days, and I usually have a drawing to kind of show how this means, but I'm going to try to explain as well as we can. And again, very similar to a rocket ship taking off. The first 10 days are what we call defying gravity. If you think about a rocket ship that takes off to outer space or a moon or something like that, I guess the moon is in outer space? I don't know. I have to learn that in my kids' school today. But there's, it's a tiny, tiny shuttle with these two huge rocket blaster ships on it, right? And they get that shuttle, those rocket blasters get their shuttle off the ground, and I believe they just run for about 2 minutes, my understanding. And in those first 2 minutes, they use 87% of the energy that it takes for them to get to outer space in the first 2 minutes just to get through gravity, just to defy gravity. And it's the same with your habits. The first 10 days are the hardest in terms of exerting energy, in terms of the amount of energy put forth to get through that. And it takes awareness and it takes some willpower during that time. And if we have both awareness and willpower, and we can focus for those first 10 days to get through the habit gravity of the old habit, and we use 87% of that energy in that first 10 days, we start to make some progress. And then the second 10 days gets a little easier. But it's also where we have quite a bit of resistance because our old habits are still trying to pull us back. So days 10 to 20 is where I feel like a lot of that resistance overcomes us. When we put 87% of that willpower in those first 10 days, days 10 to 20 is where we don't have as much willpower. And that resistance starts to pull back at us. It starts to pull us back towards the earth, if you will. And it's a place where in my coaching and consulting, when I go on site with somebody, someone pays me a good amount of money for me to come out and give them new habits to take advantage of and to put into action, and they do it immediately. And within 7 to 10 days, they're seeing results already. Their stats are changing. Their staff is changing. It's happier. They're patient. We got more patients coming in. Like everything about it is good. And then after that 10 days and that 2-week cycle is when I start to see doctors start fading back to their old habits. Even though they had great results, they're turned on about it. They just kind of start going back to those old habits. So days 10 to 20, I think, is the most critical time for you to be creating this new habit. I said the first 10 days are the hardest as far as exerting energy is concerned, but the second 10 days are when you have to fight through resistance during this time. It's not as hard to create the new habit. You're fighting the resistance of the old habit. First 10 days are typically pretty easy as far as the old habit is concerned because you have great awareness. It's like going to the gym the first day. Like you're like, I'm going to go get ripped and buff. And day one, you get up and you go work out and it feels good and you're making progress and you really don't even think about that old habit because you're starting something new and you're aware and you have willpower. Those second 10 days 10 through 20 is where you're starting to forget some of that stuff. The excitement's not there as much. So that's when resistance has a chance to take over. You need to fight through that. And then days 10 or 20 through 30. I've got on there the last 10 days, but it's certainly not the last 10 days when it comes to a habit because there's always some gravity pulling back on you. But days 20 through 30 is when you're really starting to get escape velocity. You're getting out of that gravity pull, and you're starting to make some changes. This is where acclimation comes in. Your new habits become a lot more integrated into your life. And it's to a point where you would actually have to make a decision not to go with your new habit. It's the same with me. Again, I mentioned earlier with the drinking, just drinking alcohol. Make it sound like I've been drinking. But it's just having alcohol, a couple drinks at night, whatever it might be. For me, yesterday, I had a thought that I was like, a beer would be nice. I was out grilling. It'd be nice to have a beer right now. But I would actually have to make a decision to go against my new habit at this point. It's been 6 months, but that really happened in that 20 to 30 day window where you'd have to make a conscious decision to go against it. Your old habits have started to fade off. So instead of your new awareness fading off, your old habits have faded off. And once they start to fade, this day to 20 to 30 is when you can really start getting some momentum towards that. But you've got to show that willpower, have that awareness days 0 to 10. The willpower is day 10 to 20 to make sure that resistance doesn't pull you back. And days 20 to 30, it starts to get a little bit easier, right? You start to cruise a little bit, just like a rocket ship would then be up in the solar system, not having to put as much energy into it. It's kind of coasting. And then we have to make a decision to turn around to go back into that gravity. Same idea here with your habits. Now, another thing I want to make is that you can really only be working on one habit at a time. And if you apply this framework of a 30 days, and you have awareness towards that one habit and willpower towards that one habit for 30 days, and you start to get into a routine, especially a morning routine, after 30 days, it has become a routine that you would have to change back if you chose to, and you can start working on the next habit. So if you have 3 habits you want to change, set them up to work on one for 30 days. Once you get that one moving, move on to the next one for the next 30 days. Get that one rolling as well, and you're going to have some great results as far as your overall productivity and kind of what happens in your life, the changes that you want to make. All right, tomorrow we go back to perfect case acceptance. I'm going to give you some case presentation and case acceptance myths. So I'm going to go over some of the stuff that other coaches have told you to do. I'm going to go over some stuff that has been around the chiropractic world for a while that we believe to be true about case acceptance or about case presentation, and really is just stuff that someone made up along the way. May have worked back in the 80s and the 90s, but is not effective with how savvy patients are today. So make sure you stop by tomorrow for Perfect Case Acceptance show on Wednesday. Thursday, we're getting a referral mastery. We move into convenience. I'm very excited about that. It's one of my favorite of the 6 C's. Probably my favorite one is the convenience. So I'll see y'all tomorrow morning. Make sure you answer the question of the day, which is where there. Top 3 most used apps on your phone before you leave, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.